Hey there friends, as I often state, my channel is not a news channel. I try to do more investigative type work, kind of scratch the surface and dig down into things a little bit and give my opinion, not just deliver news. I got a good one for you today. Katie Pavlik did some really good work and uncovered some very interesting stuff, some misuse on tax dollars, and it's going to surprise you where some of this money comes from. First, let me get into the part of this that is going to seem meaningless at first, although it's going to enrage you, but it does tie into some stuff that's going to piss you off even more. There is a program in Washington, D.C. funded with taxpayer money. This one is a program on encouraging young people as young as 6 years old to become trans people. In a story uncovered by Katie Pavlik, an organization was awarded grant money to bring young people in and encourage them to become trans people, encourage them to transition into a different gender or whatever terminology they are going to use. Now, this is a nonprofit, and as you may or may not know, nonprofits can be, depending on who the nonprofit is for, can be kind of strict on reporting requirements to make sure that they follow federal guidelines as far as receiving that grant money. In many cases, they are going to ask you for results. They want to know, number one, what is this grant money for? Number two, after you've been receiving it, are you getting the results, and tell us what these results are? And the main reason why is because politicians want to prance around and brag about the grant money that they sent out, and this is what I help to do. So it's all a vicious cycle as far as the politicians needing this information for political reasons and then requiring the 501(c)(3)s or the nonprofits to have to go through all this strict requirement as far as providing paperwork and documentation. This 501(c) that was receiving grant money in DC had to provide a brief description of a success story. They said, looking in the yellow highlight, take Daniel, name change to protect his identity, one of our unicorn attendees, youth age 6 to 9 years of age. When Daniel joined the program a year ago, he was too scared to let his father drop him off, but by the end of his session, he was begging to stay longer and gushing about how much fun he had had with youth and staff. Real quick, when I was 6 to 9 years old, my decision making was pretty bad. I didn't know if I wanted to shove a piece of corn up my nose and shoot it across the room or go swing from water hoses tied to the tallow trees in our backyard. My decision making skills were not honed at that point. Did I know anything about what gender was, or if I was supposed to be making some kind of lifelong choice at that point based on gender? No. I was more curious about how long the mashed potatoes would stay stuck to the ceiling that I had just thrown up there with my brother and sister. But we're encouraging 6-year-olds to choose their gender. This is one of our program managers here. This is actually a girl with the facial hair that you see right there. She has received, quote, top surgery to remove her breasts already, and apparently taking some hormones to give her some male facial hair. It all began at the urging of the trans man who manages Little Smiles, a non-binary educator named Kitchen, they them pronouns. This chick goes on to say, for many of the families I work with, I am the first trans adult they have ever met. The first confirmation that their child has a future to grow into. It has been immensely healing for me as a trans adult to be in a community with trans children with the lineage of trans ancestry stretching across generations. Let me translate that. I'm happy to see that other parents are willing to sacrifice their children's mental state in order to give me confirmation about the stupid and silly decisions I made when I was younger. Now, this particular transaction we're talking about this organization, they received $50,000 at this point. As you can see, $35,000 of that went to payroll dollars for our little friend Ty that we just saw and some other administrators at the place. That's typically what happens with these slush funds that these politicians get of money that goes out to feel-good operations. It's usually just going to be facility payments and payroll dollars. So essentially, it's just a money farm. It's a place for you to create a figurative need for something and just pay somebody a lot of money, and of course you have a built-in voter base at that point. Now, Little Smalls offers up field trips like Dragtastic Dress Up. Again, this is grant money that's paying for these programs from your tax dollars. They went to the Kennedy Center where the children explored gender expression, learned from local drag queens about their, quote, craft, watching them, quote, strut their stuff. Last summer, they threw an affirming pool party held at a private swimming pool so the kids could freely bask in all their trans queer glory. These are parents, grown adults, sending their children to this stuff. Now, I often try to tell people that my goal is to try to help these people out. These trans people, they have gender dysphoria. It's outlined in the DSM-5 book. It is a true mental illness. It's a mental condition. A lot of times I state, it's like if you have a schizophrenic friend that comes up to you and goes, Paul, I hear a bunch of voices when I'm in a room by myself. And if it's like if you walked up to them, put your arm around them and said, yeah, Billy, I hear them too. Go you. Good for you. Hear those voices. Talk back to them if you want to. It's perfectly normal. It's not normal. You would try to get them help. You wouldn't encourage their mental illness. In this case, we're not only trying to encourage a mental illness with gender dysphoria, but we're trying to create new little mental illness kids. In this case, they actually acknowledge that gender dysphoria is an issue and a real thing. Last year's camp theme was Marvelous Monsters and Gender Joy, inspired by the children's book Me and My Dysphoria Monster. Dysphoria. That's the term used to classify their mental illness in the DSM-5 book on mental illnesses. Now, this is a very well-funded organization. That $50,000 we just talked about was a drop in the bucket from one check they got. Did you know that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, had a program to, quote, combat anti-LGBTQ violence in the school system and gave this organization over $500,000. Did you know that? Did you know that's what FEMA did? Did you have any idea? When the hurricane was hitting your house and FEMA was slow to give anybody money, did you know they had written a check for $500,000 to this one organization in Washington, D.C.? You're probably wondering, what's all this got to do with me and why should I care? Remember our beloved Bipartisan Safer Communities Act that these turncoat Republican senators and congressmen agreed to based on a little bit of emotion that came out of the Uvalde shooting? Yeah, my heart goes out to the Uvalde people. You don't pass a bill based on strict emotion just because your heart hurts a little bit. I'm sorry, that sounds a little cold. Yeah, sounds a little cold. I feel for the families. That doesn't mean that anybody, including these politicians, had a right to come after my rights at that point. But they did anyway. Here, just last month, 2 months ago, they put out a report bragging about how they had spent some of their money. Now, this is where you're going to start to get a little pissed off. Key components of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, you see some of the things they brag about. $250 million spent for community violence interventions. Look to the far right column. $1 billion to hire and train 14,000 school-based mental health professionals, including counselors, psychologists, and social workers. I'm going to do the quick math for you. $1 billion divided by 14,000 school-based mental health professionals is $1 million. They needed $1 million per person to train school-based mental health professionals. Tell me our government is not the best in the world at pissing away money. Look right below that, $240 million for mental health in schools. Look right below that, $400 million in additional authorities to expand community-based mental health services. And here they brag with the $250 million from BSCA and annual appropriations. The Biden-Harris administration has already funded nearly 80 organizations across the country to expand effective community violence interventions. And of course, you can see a list of all the Democrat-run cities who are getting all this grant money. Remember, this grant money that they are sending out as a result of this bill is your taxpayer dollar. I don't care what your political affiliation is. You are contributing to all of these states receiving your money. Now I'm headed somewhere with this. I'm tying all of this together. Remember, we talked about the little trans place, a trans farm, if you will, where we cultivate young people and convince them that they have a mental illness that they need to celebrate. We also talked about the money that the federal government was earmarking for mental illness and for safety reasons. Gun violence, gun safety. Remember, they hijacked that term gun safety, although they never promote any actual gun safety. Here's more that will tie it all together and send you off the edge. That DC project from the Mayor Bowser explains the cash collected from the district's coffers and allocated to SMILE, that's that trans farm that we talked about, was categorized as aiding student success and curbing gun-involved violence in Bowser's crime cesspool, which once earned the moniker America's murder capital. That's from Katie Pavlik in Town Hall. Now I'm starting to tie these loose ends together. Notice in the very center there, fiscal year 25, LGBTQIA plus, well, they keep adding to that one, Violence Prevention and Response Team, that is a $50,000 grant. Just an example of what kind of money they're putting into these organizations. Now, in order to get that $50,000 from the DC mayor, this is what you had to do and tell her how you intended to spend her money. These are the check boxes that this organization, this Transform, checked. They checked the End Gun Violence box, and they checked the All Students on Pathways to Success box. Why did they check those two boxes for a Transform? Remember, they're simply trying to cultivate young trans people. This program has nothing to do with firearms. Their justification was SMILE argued that those two administrative objectives are achievable through them creating a safe space where youth can express themselves without fear of judgment or discrimination, celebrating identity, promoting self-acceptance, and developing positive sense of self. Those were the reasons given to the mayor of DC for money to create a place where you cultivate and create new trans people to send out into the world. End Gun Violence and All Students on Pathways to Success. You see what they've done? By hijacking the phrase gun safety, they can tie this now to other groups that have nothing to do with any kind of firearm related issue. They can take the money that a gun control bill now is allocating to mental health because they made you feel like, again, this was all based on feelings after Uvalde, that we needed money for therapy, PTSD, and things like that after we have a certain type of school shooting or a shooting, some kind of violence involving a firearm, right? We need that money for that. And politicians were like, oh yeah, that sounds like a reasonable idea. But they label it mental health. They are creating mental health issues with these little trans people in these organizations. And now they say, because of the, quote, perceived violence, and I'll get more into that in a minute, because of the violence against these trans people, now we need to create a safe place for them, which we just created. So we need some of your gun control money for mental health to put into our new tranny farm over here to create new trans people because they're probably going to have violence against them. How weird is that? How weird is that to make that jump that you're creating a safe space so now you get a dip into the pocket and dip it into the bucket of safe space money from this mental health pool of money over here that was created by a bill. These are two totally unrelated things that they have now tied together just using the word safety. Safe place, gun safety. But you know the messed up thing? They're tying all this to an increase in the LGBTQXYZ, the increase supposedly in the violence against that group. I've stated this before and I'm going to state it again. This is a perpetual cycle. These people are mentally unstable. They are overly medicated. They are highly medicated. So you are medicating an unstable person with mood enhancing drugs, psychotropic drugs that have black box warnings that create mania, suicidal tendencies, homicidal tendencies, anxiety. You're over medicating an already mentally unstable person, and then guess what they're doing? They're committing boy, YouTube is going to want to take this down. They're committing self-deletion, ending their own lives. So they are committing these acts of violence against their own persons and within their own community. They're creating all this perception of violence against them. In other words, we're not the ones doing it. Those of us who don't have that mental disorder. They are either doing it to themselves or to each other within their own community. Think I'm making it up? They actually have their own studies on this. The School of Law Williams Institute at UCLA has a report called Intimate Partner Violence and Sexual Abuse Among LGBT People. They go on to state that regarding transgender people, findings of lifetime intimate partner violence among transgender people from purposive studies range from 31 to 50%. In fact, oddly enough and ironically, a DC project, DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, stated and cited the exact same thing regarding domestic violence peaks more than ever for the LGBTQIA+ community. Lifetime intimate partner violence among the transgender community from purposive studies ranges from 31% to 50%. So they are citing this same study on one of their own websites, but they want to say that you and I are the problem. These people are doing this to themselves. You can search long and hard to try to find some kind of spike in normal people, and I use that term really loosely, normal people attacking and hurting these people. They're doing it to themselves. They're a danger to their own selves and their own communities. So this is what we're faced with. We have a vicious cycle that they own and they create and they fuel. They provoke mentally unstable people by creating these little tranny farms like I just described here, this Smile in Washington, D.C. They use our money in order to pay for it. Then they contribute to increased violence amongst themselves and, of course, like we've seen here recently, with the new, quote, mass shooters that we have out there, they're going out into public and shooting other people. So what does that do? Oh, that increases now. We have a national outcry for gun safety funding. We need a new bill. Wait till the next Uvalde. They're going to try to pass another bill, and inside there, they're going to earmark more money and more funding to now create additional safe spaces. So now we award money to create new safe areas for these people to go into. So again, it's a vicious cycle. Provoke mentally unstable people, then they contribute to the increased violence, then there's a natural outcry for gun safety funding, then they award money to create safe areas, which are creating and provoking mentally unstable people. This cycle cannot end unless it is defunded. Friends, I have a moral compass that guides me, and it is fairness. It's treating other people with the same level of respect that they give me. I'm not going to kiss anybody's butt, but I will treat you with a certain level of respect if you are treating me with that. The problem I see is these people embroiled in these types of situations with this trans community and the gun safety, quote, community, the gun control community. These people don't care about anybody else. They honestly don't. It's the almighty dollar is all they care about. Not one program that they put out is meant to help any of these people. This little trans farm that they're building, that's not intended to help anybody. That's intended to encourage somebody with a smidgen of a mental issue, and they just throw fuel on it. They throw gas onto that fire and make it worse. So even the hint of somebody with a mental illness, now they perpetuate it by making it. If it was a doubt, if there was a doubt that this person was going to be mentally ill, now they just say, we got you. And they create that. They make sure that that prophecy is fulfilled, so to speak. So they're never really trying to get these people help. They're ushering them into a place that they might not have gone if you didn't intervene when they were frickin' 6 years old, and tomorrow they might have completely changed the set of priorities they had in life. But now you give government money, free stuff, a free babysitter so mom and dad doesn't have to fool with you today. And guess what? Now you just created a new trans person out there who, that's your voting base. That's your activists out there now, because now they're going to do every single thing that you ask or tell them to do. And they may not have ever gone down that path without somebody putting them into one of these trans farms to where they shouldn't be there in the first place. Maybe the right thing to do would be getting these people who are asking these stupid little questions at 6 years old because they saw it on TV and they thought it looked cool, or somebody told them how cool it was, or some of these people with the fake man hair on their face is telling them how cool it is. Maybe they would have never gone down that road because they would be playing with a Barbie or a Ken doll or a G.I. Joe, or again, climbing trees, throwing a football, playing hockey, riding a bicycle, jumping a ramp. But no, you just funneled them into this thing, and now they don't have any choice because you're encouraging them, and now they don't feel like they can get out of it. How many kids have gotten into playing baseball or ballet or whatever, and they were afraid to tell their parent, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not fun to me. I don't like that. You don't think the same type of mental prison happens when these kids get shoved into these stupid little things like this? They don't want to tell their parents, I don't want to do this anymore. I would like to see people try to help these children. Try to help them. It's not a healthy life to force somebody into something that they probably would not have chosen. It's not healthy to do that. Because then there's regret, remorse, a whole lot of other things like that. You're medicating them now. It's not healthy to do that. These children should be allowed to grow up. They should be allowed to be children. Do silly stuff, do crazy stuff, but not stupid stuff. These parents are at fault here. My point about these people not trying to get anyone else help is they never try to help these young people. They never try to get them the actual counseling. I don't mean counseling with another person with fake man hair on their face. I'm talking about counseling with a person that gives them options, not one option. Your option is to transition. No. That's not a list of options. How many times do you think they tell these children, now if you still want to be, quote, normal and not transition, that's always an option too. Do you think they encourage them for that? Do you think having somebody who is dealing with their own mental issues as the counselor and the lead point and the point person of counseling one of these children, do you really think that they're encouraging that as a viable option? That, hey, you know, you can just go throw a football or ride a bicycle if you want. You don't have to be here dressing up like a drag queen, right? No, you know they're not doing that. They are funneling them into this one area instead of trying to get them help. I want them to get help. I don't want to see them as another statistic. These people are part of the problem. They have created this cycle, and I guarantee you, this is an unwritten thing that they talk about behind closed doors, because now all the pieces have come together. How they are tying now safe spaces to gun safety so that they can justify earmarking and pulling those dollars from a gun control bill to now help fund a tranny factory.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's so horrible!